following show contains adult content. It's not our intent to offend anyone, but we want to inform you that if you are a child under the age of 18 or get offended easily, this next show may not be for you. The content, opinions, and subject matter of these shows are solely the choice of your show hosts and their guests, and not those of the Entertainment Network or any affiliated stations. Any comments or inquiries should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for listening.
To the Adventures of Pipeman on W4CY Radio.
Wake up, America! It's time for the Adventures of Pipeman on W4CY.com, West Palm Beach's #1 internet radio station. Here's your host, the Pipeman.
Yo! It's the Adventures of Pipeman, but this is our special new podcast, and this is going to be a great show. So you're here on Pipeman, the Wandering Jew, on W4CY Radio, and I am the Wandering Jew. That was a nickname of mine by my family when I was younger, before I ever got married, because I always moved where I vacationed. So I'm bringing it back now because I think it's very important that we have this show to spread love and unity around the world and squash hate and anti-Semitism. And we're going to have some great guests. But today's guest, I'm very excited about because I love this next guest. Used to have a show on our station, still has a podcast now that we're going to talk about. And man, he's a rabbi, but he's my favorite kind of rabbi because he's a rabbi that is also inclusive of all people, which we're going to talk about it, and especially the organization that he leads, which is called the American Alliance of Jews and Christians. So that's why Rabbi Lapin is so important to this show. So let's bring him on. Rabbi Lapin, how are you?
Couldn't be better, Pipeman. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you. Me too. You were my first introduction. You opened the doors to the wonderful world of internet radio. I knew nothing about it till I met you.
Look at that. And now you're all over the place, right?
Yeah, right.
There you go. And so I got to tell you, this show I just started recently because I was in Costa Rica hanging out, and like Costa Rica is a good place to go to brainstorm and stuff because all the outside chatter is not there usually. Okay. Like even my brother will call me up. He'll go, "Did you see the news?" And I'm like, "No, and I don't care. I'm going surfing." Like the whole world is in flames, but I'm in Costa Rica in the jungle and don't even know it's happening. I think the rest of us in the world kind of have to think that way, you know? And so what happened to me was, dumbly, I was looking through social media while I'm in Costa Rica. And I say dumbly because nowadays most good things don't come out of social media. And oh my God, I was getting attacked for being Jewish.
Oh, really?
And, oh yeah, it was bad. Like people were saying stuff, and I'm somebody that, listen, I'm not shy. I'm from New York and New Jersey. I will open my mouth. Okay. And so basically what I was noticing though, is I wasn't really going by how people were being hateful to me. I was going by what they know and what they don't know. And that's when I came up with the concept of doing this podcast, because people are so uninformed nowadays. People don't read history. They don't know history. They just jump on the next trend. They don't, check, whether it's legit or not. They don't fact check anything. They don't cite anything. You'll laugh at this, Rabbi, but somebody said something. I said, "Is that peer reviewed?" And they said, "Yeah, all my friends agree with me." And that is exactly the issue nowadays. So I don't want to come at this like anti-Semitism is spreading so rampantly, but I don't want to go at it from a hate perspective. We do want to squash out anti-Semitism, but the way to squash it out, in my opinion, is through love and unity. We're falling for the oldest trick in the book, divide and conquer, and this is history repeating itself. So I gotta tell you, to me, I say that Pipeman, the Wandering Jew, is an avenger for Jews and humanity everywhere. Rabbi Lapin, you are that avenger, because let's first talk about, you lead an organization called the American Alliance of Jews and Christians. Not many rabbis would do that. That's what I love about you. So tell me a little bit about how that came to be and what you do with that organization.
Well, I think the founding moment was a blinding insight that struck me a while back, which was, why is it that thousands of people every year, and I'm looking back at 2019, thousands of people are drowning in the Mediterranean every year. All of them are trying to get from Africa to Europe in tiny little boats. How come there are no people drowning in little boats trying to get from Europe to Africa?
Whoa.
Well, the answer is simple, and that's because there's more money in Europe than Africa, and people are drawn to economic vitality. So that explains it. But then I realized that it explains nothing at all, because it still left the big question, which is, why in this day and age, where capital knows no boundaries, capital flows anywhere, with the internet and everything else and the proliferation of publishing and books, knowledge knows no boundaries. So why is it that North Africa is poverty-stricken and Europe is wealthy, which makes it perfectly natural and perfectly normal that people will find any way to cross the Mediterranean going northbound, even in leaky little boats? And that question preoccupied me, and was the reason I ended up writing a book about this, because there have been numerous attempts, like everybody is struck by this phenomenon. It's been at least 100 years that the world has become transparent. It's at least 100 years, right? We're talking 1925. It's the aftermath of World War I. Soldiers traveled everywhere. India, Africa, Australia, New Zealand, the Far East, the Near East. People got around. And so in spite of 100 years of, don't forget, commercial air travel started in 1904, a year after the Wright brothers. People have been flying around for well over 100 years. There's been knowledge percolating for well over 100 years. Capital travel. So why is Africa poor and France and Sweden and Norway and Germany and United Kingdom are rich? It's a really important question. And there have been all kinds of attempts to resolve this. One of them, none of them work. One of them, for instance, is that Europe has more navigable rivers. African rivers are not navigable, and that's true. But so what? Not every European country has navigable rivers, and what's that got to do with anything? After all, it's also true to say that Portugal and Germany and France and England traveled in boats to Africa and set up colonies there. But where are all the African colonies in Italy and Norway and Russia? Where? Why? And if one is not going to adopt a feeble-minded and stupid racial explanation, and there's some very good reasons that those can be knocked out of the ballpark, you're left with only one explanation, Pipeman, and it's a really, really crazy one. And that is that countries whose culture was rooted in the Bible prospered. It's as simple as that. And that is why 98% of every scientific, medical, and technological discovery for the 1,000 years up to World War I, 98% of them came from Christian countries. And in my book, I explain why it is that the Bible had this impact, why it is that it is unique among all ancient texts in encouraging scientific development, economic development, and the people that inherited the cultures and lands that grew out of the Bible prospered and succeeded. And once I saw that, then I realized that this Bible thing is much more important than most of us realize. And we're living in a time when the majority of Americans truly do not know if Leviticus is the name of a book or a man's aftershave lotion.
It's true, too. It's
and
true.
So I realized that Jews and Christians have a common commitment to this mad, majestic, mysterious volume that hit the world 3,000 years ago and left the places it hit changed for all of history. And so that's why there is the American Alliance of Jews and Christians, precisely in order to promote the civilizing impact of the Bible and to overcome some of the barbaric influence that radical Islam has been spreading for the last 50 years.
Yeah, I think it's important to unite and team up against evil, to be honest, to use evil like loosely. But, to me, evil has nothing to do with a hell or a devil. It has to do with just being a bad human. That's me, is what I think of evil.
Yeah.
And, you're so right. People need to be educated. I'll tell you a story that will be so fascinating to you. There was a time in my life that I had to work with a neo-Nazi. Okay. And instead of having hate towards that neo-Nazi, I decided to have a conversation. And instead of judging, because listen, hate breeds more hate. You need to in my opinion, you need to find out what somebody's about and what makes them think the way they do before you attack them for thinking the way they do. Because if you attack them, you're not going to change their mind. Okay. And so I think that this person was very shocked of how I handled things, because I just sat there and I'm like, so let me ask you a question. Why do you believe what you do? And why do you believe about this about Jews, that about Jews? He was one of those that was, in a sheltered life and, believed we had devil horns coming out and stuff like that. I even looked at him, I'm like, do you see any horns? They're not coming out, and I listened. I didn't speak. I just listened at first, because in listening, then you know what to say. Okay. And I think that's what people speak too quickly. Maybe you don't know their reasons. Everybody's got their reasons for things. And so what I found out listening to this young person was that they never met a Jew in their life. They were nowhere around Jews, and they were basically in their neo-Nazi bubble where they were brainwashed from a very young age of how evil the Jews are and blah, 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 blah. And then he noticed from talking to me that I was not acting the way that everybody told him to. And that's the difference. When you start attacking, getting mad and stuff like that, then all you're doing is confirming everything that they were taught. So take a different route. And what ended up happening is, long story short, he ended up changing his ideology and was no longer an anti-Semite after talking to me, because I gave him some education of what really has happened in history and in our people. I think stereotypes also, people don't understand stereotypes. there's a stereotype, but doesn't mean what you think it means. Like one of the stereotypes, I always talk about this all the time, is that Jews are cheap. Most Jews I know have no problem buying something for a lot of money if it's good quality. It's not that we're cheap, it's that we're not going to spend $10 at one store when we could walk like a block away and buy the same thing for $5. But we have no problem spending $2,000 on something that's worth $2,000. And so I think that's also another thing we have to do is we have to educate the world to dispel a lot of stereotypes, not just for Jews, but for Christians and for all people, to be honest. What's your thoughts?
Well, the Australian philosopher Karl Popper was talking to somebody once who was saying, that conversation can bring peace and love. And he said, well, what are you going to say to the Nazi on the other end of a rifle when he's got that pointed at you? And so I would rephrase that a little bit and say, I'm not sure I agree with you that there's no room for hate. What do you feel towards the guys who shot up the Jews on Bondi Beach in Sydney 2 months ago?
There is room for hate. Don't get me wrong.
I think there is, and I think that's important. Now, we can go biblical and say hate the sin, not the sinner, but that's a fine distinction when it comes to Islamic terrorists.
Yeah.
So,
well, see, there you're going on the difference. Like, there's some people that just can't be converted no matter what of their thought process, not converted to something, but of their thought process. And so, yes, I think he is necessary too. I think we have to be smart about how we use our love and how we use our hate.
And certainly anti-Semitism is called the oldest hate in the world, and maybe it is. I don't really know, but it's I have never found it to be the result of ignorance. And I'm fascinated by your experience. I really am. It sounds quite wonderful, and you probably do have persuasive powers that I lack. But I've never encountered anti-Semites who when one talked to them say, "Oh, now
well, that's
get
true too. I don't think it's a lot of people. I think I reached that one person, and there were probably 50 people I punched in the face first.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you too, like, okay, so my youngest daughter, she was going to college up in the Panhandle, and she was, woke, and then she went on Birthright.
Oh, that's very interesting.
The summer before October 7th, she went on Birthright. Okay.
Oh, Birthright's very interesting. Please tell me what happened.
So first of all, she went there. She loved it. She made a lot of friends, and she got a lot of, enlightenment, because I'm a firm believer too, is like, we all live in these bubbles. Unless we travel, we don't really know what it's like anywhere. Like all these people that are saying stuff, they don't even know where Israel is. Some of them don't even know where Iran is. They don't know where Palestine is. And, they're just jumping on the bandwagon. And that's true of her generation and the people she was hanging out with. So what ended up happening is she came back, and she did find even more Judaism in herself then, but October 7th happened shortly after she came back.
Yeah.
And there were protests that were very violent at her school,
in favor of the Islamic cause.
Yes. And
fascinating.
They were all her friends protesting. So she got woke up to her woke friends, And so what she experienced was friends of hers that she met when she was in Israel became hostages or died. Her kibbutz was bombed that she stayed in,
Yeah.
and many other things like that. And she became an avenger for Judaism and against anti-Semitism. And then, you know, she's very involved now. The Chabad at her school, she got involved with for safety reasons. She was going to leave school. She was scared for her life to be at school. And I think most people don't understand that when it comes to Jews. And I'm going to add to it that when my older two kids were young, they were in high school, and there were people throwing pennies at them. And I won't mention who, but somebody in their family who never experienced this basically said, "Oh, come on, you're exaggerating. Oh, will you make a big deal?" Like people do. But unless you walk in our shoes, you don't understand what, even under normal times, what we went through. And now what we're going through, like I'm experiencing a lot of it myself. But going back to my daughter, you know, she became involved with the Chabad, and it was like a safety net and stuff. And her friends, she's not friends with them anymore, not because of any other reason, but because of they just don't seem to share the same ideology. And I'm going to say it straight out myself. Like, I don't know when it happened in my lifetime of 59 years that anybody that was liberal was pro-terrorism. Like, it's really, really strange to me that anybody, period, would be pro-terrorism, pro the regime, and they don't understand history. The part that, and I want you to expand on this next part, the part that bugs me most is that people think that Israel's only been around since 1948.
Right.
It's like, read a history book, like the Bible. So, what's your viewpoints on people thinking like that, and what my daughter experienced?
So obviously, I've done a lot of thinking and a lot of writing on what is driving these people, and it's not only in the United States, the United Kingdom. It's also there, and
Very bad.
It's been prevalent in France for many years already as well. And I'll tell you what I think it is, because how do you explain that self-proclaimed progressives are actually in favor of tyrannical regimes,
right?
That, if it had the opportunity, would rapidly execute them and all homosexuals, by the way.
Yeah. It's interesting.
They favor those regimes. And I do believe it's a little bit like the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah.
And the enemy is not just Jews. And I think this is a mistake that we Jews make all the time. And I think that we Jews got very incensed here in America when over the last 5 years we began to be the targets, particularly, as you note, after October the 7th.
Mm-hmm.
But the failure of the American university campus has been evident not for 5 years, Pipeman, but for 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very distressed that there were not a lot of Jewish voices many, many years ago saying, cut out this dangerous indoctrination that's going on the campuses.
And still to this day. You're right.
Even more so today. Yes, absolutely. But it didn't just begin 5 years ago. It wasn't that they woke up all of a sudden and said, we hate the Jews. They've been hating civilization. They've been hating the West. Jesse Jackson led a chant 60 years ago at Stanford. Hey, hey, ho, ho, Western civilization's got to go. So
Wow.
all of a sudden, I'm sort of distressed that we Jews woke up recently, because we should have been saying to all our civilization-loving comrades in arms, every peace and patriotic American, we should have been saying, stop underwriting indoctrination, anti-West, anti-civilization indoctrination at the campuses. Stop doing this to our young people.
Mm-hmm.
And Roger Kimball wrote a great book called Tenured Radicals, where he points out that all the professors in colleges around America today, tens of thousands of them, they were the guys in 1968 who were rioting on the campuses back then and promoting communism, promoting socialism. And they were students back then, and now they're the professors. And so when I say the enemy of my enemy is my friend, the reason in my mind that progressives love the Islamic world is because the Islamic world hates the West.
Mm.
We Jews just happen to be very visible symbols of Western civilization.
Mm.
We are in favor of business and money and wealth. We're in favor of capitalism. We're in favor of structure. We're in favor of religion. We are in favor of family. That's a huge one. And again, the assault on the Western family has been going on not just 5 years, it's been going on for 50 years.
Yeah.
It's 50 years since Congresswoman Patricia Schroeder tried to get women into combat in the military. Now, that's a really stupid idea. For anybody interested in security, that's a dumb idea. But if you're interested in social engineering, if you're interested in undermining the West, well, then that's a really good idea.
Mm.
Or promoting the idea that men and women are interchangeable, or the idea that you can mutilate a man and turn him into a woman. These are all very, very stupid ideas. So stupid that only someone with a graduate degree could like them. And so these are ideas that belong in the dustbin of history, and they are all, what they all share in common is they're harmful to the West. And when civilization goes, Jews die, because we only survive in a civilized environment.
Yeah.
And that was why, many, many Jews saw what was happening in the 1930s. The abolition of civilization. They saw that the Nazis were intent on destroying Western thinking and Western civilization and Western culture and Western art. They knew this was not going to be good for them. And that's exactly where we are today.
And you know what? I have to say that the one big thing that concerns me today is that you have something today that makes it even scarier than back in the Nazi times, is I'm finding anti-Semitism to be rampant among Jews. Like, there's so many Jews I know that are anti-Semitic, and I'm like, I just want to smack them in the head, to be honest. Like, what's wrong with you against your own people? Who would be against their own people, no matter who you are?
Well, and because their alignment is not to fellow Jews. Their cultural and tribal alignment is to progressivism.
Yeah, yeah. And, the thing is that, I think we've lost a lot in many years with Judaism being watered down in the respect of, most Jews nowadays, they say they're a Jew, but are they really a Jew? Type of thing. They're a Jew.
What is, when you say really Jew, what is your definition? I'm having trouble understanding how we categorize. What are you saying?
Well, see, what I was saying is not just by blood, but by being part of your people, and being.
How do you do that?
I think you do that, first of all. Well, I have different opinions on that, but first of all, I think education is very important. And the education I'm talking about is education from the Torah, from the Talmud, from the Kabbalah, from the Old Testament, and, stuff like most of these people, they don't understand Judaism. They don't know Judaism. And that's why, even from the respect of, okay, so I find a lot of the younger generations nowadays turning away from Judaism because they don't understand Hebrew. I've seen it a lot. I've seen it with my own kids.
And what do we say to a young person who's listening to us and says, "Hey, Pipeman, I hear what you're saying. Can you give me one good reason why I have a very full life. I got work, I got friends, I got a social life, I got my tech life, I date. Can you tell me why I should take even 5 minutes to study the Torah?"
Well, I have several reasons for that.
Please tell me. I'm very interested.
One thing is, I'm big in learning, and we're taught as Jews not to believe Torah, but to study Torah. And I think that's a big fundamental difference. One of the things I like about Judaism as both a born Jew and a chosen Jew is that, I don't have to live by the letter of everything, because, the Torah is so complex, and that's why they have the Talmud with the Midrash to kind of explain it. And then there's also that, game of telephone. This is a pretty long game of telephone. So, what's the game telephone, for those listening that don't know, is when you start with one person and tell a story and then get to the last person and see how the story changed. And I think it's a heritage to be proud of. Personally, that's me personally. But I think there's a lot of things like the Torah. To me, the difference between the Torah and other, religious books or documents is the Torah is kind of like a roadmap to life.
That's a fantastic definition.
Right? And so, you don't have to believe everything that's in it, but I'm also somebody that's like, I can see the whole picture, not the literal picture. So when they're talking about something that happened in history, do we know if it really happened that way? We weren't there, but it's the message you're getting from it. It's not about the literal words. It's about the message. And the message to me in Judaism is a few things. It's one, it's a people. It's more than just a religion. It's not, the religion's not even the biggest part, in my opinion. It's being part of a people, being part of a land, being part of a community. Jews are genetically Jews. Okay. You do a 23andMe like I did, it'll tell you you're an Ashkenazi Jew. It doesn't tell you.
But we also don't forget, we have many converts to Judaism who are just as Jewish, even though there's no genetic link.
Well, and I was going to go to that too.
Please,
okay. Because I've had few experiences of that in life. Okay. So my mother, 20 years before I was born, converted to Orthodox Judaism. She went to Catholic school, except she converted, I think, for the wrong reason. So for her, when it was convenient to be Catholic, she was Catholic. When it was convenient to be Jewish, she was Jewish. However, her mother was also a convert. And one of the most Jewish people I ever met in my life, my grandmother, who was not born Jewish. And my kid's mom, she did convert to Judaism. And what happened with her was when I met her, she was a born again Christian. We went and did the mikvah class. And for anybody that knows, it's not just a non-Jew that has to go to that. The Jew had to go too, So, and here's what I learned from that mikvah class. And I've studied a lot of Judaism is, every Jew should go to a mikvah class because it's one of the most educational experiences there is. And when we were doing the class, one day my ex turned to me and she goes, "Oh, that makes so much more sense." And that's what I look at the Torah. To me, the Torah is about things that to me seem factual. They seem real. They're not. as an example, the whole idea of some fictional cartoon character called the devil, I think, is kind of weird, and
Who
like
doesn't show up in the Torah, by the way.
exactly because the word sin is not even in the Hebrew language. It's
Oh, yeah,
missing
no,
the mark.
the sin is in the Hebrew language extensively. There's quite a few different words for sin.
Okay, well,
And even
then I
even
stand corrected.
it shows up right in the beginning of Genesis. So yeah, no, sin definitely shows
I
up.
just remember being taught that it really means missing the mark.
Well, that is the accurate. You're exactly right. That's one of the translations or the parallel translations of one of the words for sin.
And see, I find that to be more factual because human beings are not expected to be God. They're not expected to be perfect. So missing the mark makes a lot of sense to me. I also think a lot of things in the Bible make sense to me because they're historical. Like the holidays that we celebrate are all biblical holidays. Hanukkah is not an important holiday because it's not biblical. People think that's the important holiday. It's not, and like there's so many things that just make sense and common sense, even like night then day, Saturday being the Shabbat, the seventh day, doing things on the lunar calendar. Like that makes more sense than the Gregorian calendar to me because it just makes sense. But I also think it's a matter of in the Torah, there's some also order. I like that. I like that there's order. It's like you don't go from the first book to the seventh book. You go, as things happen and it all makes sense. And as we know, when you go to services throughout the year, you go through the whole Torah and then the beginning of the year, you start over again. So you're constant. And I'm also a believer in repetition's the mother of skill. So, that's another thing. But bringing the convert thing up, that is also very important to me because the way to convert to Judaism opposed to any other religion is something I like because we don't recruit anybody and we in fact push them away because we want them to become Jewish because they want to become Jewish, not for a spouse, not for a family member, not for a friend, only for themselves and their own personal. And that's where I kind of believe no matter what somebody believes, if it makes them a better person and it makes them somebody that will not intentionally do harm to people, then I'm okay with it. It's like, I don't believe they have to be Jewish, but I do think they should be an ally to Jews. And that's where your alliance, I love that because we are a small people throughout the world. We need an alliance. We need allies. And that's part of why I do this, because I think the people that really need to be educated are, and when I say educated, I don't mean in a demeaning way, just like given a perspective that maybe they sit there and say, just like my ex-wife did, wow, that does make sense.
Yeah. No, I think it does, and indeed, many people do convert, and many people do find meaning in it. There's no question about it. But I think above all, what it does do is, let's not forget, it's the only religious text that begins or even contains the words, "In the beginning, God created heaven and earth."
Right.
Nowhere else do you find that, and it's hugely important because it helps to explain why it is that for the last 5 centuries, the overwhelming majority of scientific discovery, whether it was Isaac Newton or Boyle or Kepler or Clark and Maxwell and Lord Kelvin, and without exception, all of these guys were devout Bible-believing Christians. And we have always come to believe the cultural lie that religion and science are in conflict. But that was never true for all these great scientists who literally moved the world from scientific illiteracy to the airplane and atomic power.
I love that.
And so there is so much of that rooted in the Bible, that these guys were inspired to study God's work, namely science, right? Because studying the natural world to them was studying God's work. And the same way as if I want to get to know the Beatles, there's very little chance that I'm going to have dinner with Paul McCartney, but I can really get to know their work, and through that, get to know them. These scientists looked at study of natural science and the natural world as a way to get to know the Creator because of that opening verse, in the beginning God created heaven and earth. But it's really important that all these scientific, technological, medical breakthroughs of the last 5 centuries were done by Bible-believing Christians.
I love that, because I am into science, and it is one of the things I kind of do like about Judaism, that to me, it's not just faith, it is science too. And which brings me to something I was thinking about earlier, because you said something. Remember, it was very popular, but what was your opinion about the book, The Bible Code?
So it's I've written quite a lot on it. As a matter of fact, there's a jacket blurb from me on one of the code books. Anybody who is familiar with the Hebrew, or actually even if you're not, as long as you just look at a Hebrew Bible, you can actually see it yourself. Yeah. And if you know a little bit of mathematics, you can compute the probabilities of it happening randomly, and they're stupendously high against. So there's no question about it that those are there. And it's a mystery, because prior to the age of computers, it's how do you write a text?
Right.
By placing a code on, it's called the skip of 50. In other words, you read every 50th letter and it spells out a subtext. And you can search the works of Shakespeare or Guy de Maupassant in French, or Balzac or Dostoevsky. You read any literature and search, and you will not see this happening anywhere else. It only happens in the Bible. That said, I will tell you that 90% of what's been written about the Bible codes is sensationalistic and rubbish. They are real. They are true. They're there for anybody who wants to see with eyes in their head. It's not hard to see. But the notion that they can serve a prophetic role is rubbish.
And I like you saying it that way, because there's other things out there that in this day and age they have commercialized that kind of takes away the spiritualism of it. So I'm glad you said that. In the meantime, I want to talk a little bit, because we're close to running out of time. I want to talk about your newest book, The Holistic You.
Yeah.
Tell me about that book, because that book to me is a must read for everybody.
Thank you very much indeed. I heartily agree with you. But the reason I agree with you is because it's not that I like selling books. I do love selling books, but I like it even better when I get letters from people in whose lives the books made a difference. I like it when people come back to buy other books of mine because earlier ones played such a significant role in the transformation of their lives for the better. And so the Holistic You is huge. It really is huge. And let me explain what that's about. What I've done is distilled the essence of a happy, fulfilling life down into 5 basic principles. Why 5 has a lot to do with the 5 books of Moses. It has to do with why there are 5 commandments on each of the 2 tablets for the 10 commandments. 5 is a very important number. And what it does is it It's like having a magic 8-ball that can save you from making bad mistakes. What I mean by bad mistake is that
Are you talking about this?
Yeah, yeah,
I'll tell you why I have this handy here, but go ahead.
And so in the final analysis, there are 5 areas that produce fulfillment and happiness and a feeling of contentment in life. Number 1 is family. Now, and by the way, this is not in any order. When I say number 1, I'm not saying it's more important than the other 4. I'm saying all 5 are equally important, even though you may emphasize one or another at different stages and seasons of your life. But family covers all relationships that are male, female in origin. What I mean by that is that when you have Thanksgiving dinner with your uncles and aunts and your cousins and your nephews and nieces, all of that glorious conglomeration of family is only there because many years ago, grandpa and grandma found joy in one another's arms. That's what family means. And so family is your sex relationship and the relationships with people who are there because of other male-female relationships. The second one is finance, everything having to do with money, the people you interact with to make money, and your financial possessions, your bank accounts, your yacht, and your racehorse. All of these fall under money. Then comes friendship, your social relationships, all relationships that have nothing to do with family or finance, political relationships, sporting relationships, and so on and so forth. That's all under the third category of friendship. After that comes faith, relationship with the world of the spirit and the world of the soul and with God. And then the F of fitness, and I call it the 5 Fs because it's family, finance, friendships, faith, and fitness, your relationship with your own body. And understanding these things and integrating them into your life is a sure way of not suffering deep disappointment. When I say deep disappointment, you know, I'm speaking about 50-year-old guys who tell me, where were you when I was 20? I never believed that at the age of 50, I wouldn't have any money. I'd be having to work in order to still keep going. I thought I don't have any money. Well, that's because you blew it when you were 20, you idiot. And I'm
laughing because I fit that mold.
Or the 45-year-old woman who pursued her career, and she's now 45 years old, and all her friends are hanging out with their kids and with their husbands, and she says to me, "How could this have happened to me?" Okay. In other words, to address your life purposefully and integrating your family, your finances, your friendships, your fitness, and your faith, tying that all together. None of this is easy. It's complicated, but there are methodologies in order to make it successful and how to tackle it and how to achieve it successfully. And that's what my book, The Holistic You, is about.
Nice. Everybody has to get it. And then can they get the book off your website? Which, by the way, everybody can go to Rabbi Daniel Lapin.com. That's DANIEL LAPIN to check out all of his columns, check out his website. Make sure to check out the Rabbi Daniel Lapin Show, one of the best shows we ever had on the network here. Incredible still podcast and a wealth of information. And can they find your book on their website, or they just search Amazon?
Well, they certainly can find it on the website, but it wouldn't be a very Jewish way of buying it because it's a lot cheaper on Amazon.
There you go. I love it. And I real quick, and then we're going to end here. And I could talk to you forever, so we're going to have you back on the show because you're such a wealth of knowledge, and you know, somebody that certainly fits into my goal and mission to spread love and unity throughout the world and squash hate. But when I was a little kid, I had some issues with my mother for many years. And, you know, it was interesting because I wanted to leave her to move with my dad, but then I was scared to. I was scared of the repercussions, or you have hammered into your head. It's your mother. It's your mother. Your mother. And so finally, when I got to a point where I really had too much, I was out with my dad on visitation, and he knew that I wanted to do something, but he wanted to make it my decision, and I just couldn't decide. My favorite toy at that time was the Magic 8 Ball. And he says to me, "Why don't you ask the Magic 8 Ball?" And that's what I did. And that night I moved with my father, and it changed my life forever. The Magic 8 Ball.
That's amazing.
It might have been a divinely inspired Magic 8 Ball, but a Magic 8 Ball really nonetheless. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, Rabbi, to have you on. Pipeman,
great to be together with you again. We must talk some more, Dean. It's been a pleasure, and again, thank you for your pioneering work in internet radio.
Well, thank you for your pioneering work in everything, including your wisdom and your Judaism. And let's band together to be avengers for love and unity throughout the world. Thank you, Rabbi, and thanks for being on the Adventures of Pipeman.
Been great to be with you. All the best.
Thank you for listening to the Adventures of Pipeman on W4CY Radio.